There is a moment, quiet, subtle, almost sacred, when someone tells you exactly how they feel without ever saying the words you are longing to hear. They say, I'm not ready. They say, I need space. They say, I don't want anything serious. And if you are listening with wisdom instead of fear, you will realize something profound. These words are not the absence of love, they are the presence of it, uncontained, unhealed, and terrifying to the one who feels it. Avoidant psychology is not about coldness, it is about protection. It is the armor worn by a heart that learned too early that closeness came with a cost. When they pull away, it is not because you are too much. It is because what they feel is more than they know how to hold. Love, to them, does not feel safe. It feels like exposure, it feels like surrender. And surrender, when you have never been held gently, feels like danger. Here is the divine truth you must anchor into your spirit. Love does not flee because it is weak. It flees because it is powerful. When someone tells you they cannot give more, yet their energy lingers, when their eyes soften but their words harden, when they retreat right after moments of closeness, this is not confusion. This is fear standing at the edge of transformation. But hear me clearly now, because this is where wisdom separates from wishful thinking. Understanding their psychology does not mean abandoning your own dignity. Compassion does not require self-betrayal. You are not called to chase someone into emotional readiness. You are called to remain rooted in your value while truth reveals itself. Avoidant hearts test love by withdrawing from it. They wait to see if it will pursue them, pressure them, or disappear. And the most powerful response, the one aligned with divine order, is not pursuit, not pleading, not proving. It is peace. It is steadiness. It is the quiet declaration of, I honor what I feel, and I honor myself. Love that is real does not need to be convinced, but it does need to feel safe. And safety is not created through urgency. It is created through presence without force. When you stop trying to pull them closer and instead stand whole within yourself, something shifts. Either they rise to meet you, or they reveal that they are not ready to love in the way you deserve. And both outcomes are blessings. Because the purpose of love is not to awaken someone at the expense of your soul. The purpose of love is alignment, where effort flows naturally, where connection feels expansive, not exhausting. If someone says they cannot give you what you seek, believe the message beneath the message. They are standing face to face with their own unhealed depths. You are not here to heal them. You are here to walk in truth. And when love is ready, when fear loosens its grip, when the heart chooses courage over control, it will not run. It will remain calm, certain, open. Until then, stand firm. Stay awake. And remember this eternal principle. What is meant for you will never require you to shrink, wait in confusion, or abandon your worth to be chosen. Avoidant behavior is often misunderstood as emotional disinterest, yet in truth, it is frequently the opposite. What appears as withdrawal, detachment, or emotional distance is very often the nervous system reacting to something that feels overwhelmingly meaningful. When an avoidant individual begins to feel a genuine emotional bond, their internal alarm is activated, not because the connection lacks value, but because it suddenly matters too much. Love for them is not neutral territory. It is loaded with memory, risk, and perceived loss of control. At the core of avoidant psychology lies a belief formed early in life: closeness equals danger. This belief is not usually conscious. It is encoded in the body, shaped by experiences where emotional needs were minimized, dismissed, or met inconsistently. As a result, intimacy does not register as comfort. It registers as exposure. So when attachment begins to deepen, the avoidance system does what it has learned to do best. It protects by pulling away. This is why avoidant behavior often intensifies precisely at moments of emotional closeness. After vulnerability, after bonding experiences, after meaningful conversations, the avoidant individual may suddenly become distant or unavailable. This pattern confuses those on the receiving end because it contradicts logic. Yet, from a psychological standpoint, it makes perfect sense. The bond activates longing, and longing activates fear. Distance becomes the quickest way to regulate that fear. Disguised attachment is still attachment. An avoidant person may downplay their feelings, rationalize detachment, or insist they are fine on their own. But their behavior often reveals otherwise. They remember details, show up in subtle ways, feel threatened by emotional shifts, or struggle to fully let go even when they claim indifference. These are not signs of emptiness. They are signs of a heart that is deeply engaged but poorly equipped to remain open. What makes this dynamic particularly deceptive is that avoidant individuals are often highly functional and self sufficient. They may appear emotionally composed, rational, and unaffected. Yet emotional independence is not the same as emotional safety. Many avoidant individuals learned early that relying on others was unreliable, so they became skilled at relying on themselves. Love challenges that identity. To need someone feels like weakness, and to risk loss feels intolerable. This is why avoidant behavior should not be automatically interpreted as lack of care. In many cases, it is a sign that something meaningful is occurring beneath the surface. The withdrawal not a rejection of the other person. It is a rejection of vulnerability itself. They are not running from you. They are running from what you awaken in them. However, recognizing that avoidant behavior can mask deep attachment does not mean romanticizing it or tolerating emotional inconsistency indefinitely. Awareness is meant to bring clarity, not self-sacrifice. Understanding the psychology allows one to stop internalizing the withdrawal as personal failure. It reframes the behavior as an internal struggle rather than a verdict on worth. Avoidant distance is not emptiness, it is containment. It is emotion held behind walls built for survival. And while love may exist there, hidden and restrained, it will only become healthy when fear no longer dictates behavior. Until then, the presence of attachment does not guarantee the capacity to sustain connection. When someone repeatedly uses language that signals emotional distance, it is easy to assume they are being honest about their lack of feeling. Statements like, "I'm not good at relationships," "I don't want anything serious," or "I need space right now," sound definitive on the surface. Yet within avoidant psychology, these words often function less as declarations of truth and more as shields against vulnerability. They are not always statements of desire. They are statements of fear. Avoidant individuals frequently struggle to name what they feel in real time. Emotional awareness has not been safely developed, so feelings emerge as tension, discomfort, or an urge to escape rather than as clear emotional language. When intimacy begins to grow, the body reacts first. The nervous system senses threat, even if the mind cannot fully explain why. In that moment, distancing language becomes a tool to regain a sense of control. By creating emotional space through words, they attempt to regulate internal overwhelm. This is why avoidant language often appears right after moments of closeness. A deep conversation, increased affection, or shared vulnerability can trigger a sudden shift in tone. What follows is language that pushes the connection back into safer territory. The words are not necessarily false, but they are incomplete. They describe the avoidant person's capacity at that moment, not the absence of feeling underneath. Fear of vulnerability is central here. To admit love, longing, or attachment requires exposure to disappointment, rejection, and dependence. For someone who learned that emotional needs were risky or unmet, vulnerability feels like standing without armor. Distancing language allows them to maintain autonomy while still staying connected on their own terms. It is a compromise between desire and self-protection. There is also a profound fear of expectation embedded in avoidant speech. When they say they don't want anything serious. When they say they don't want anything serious, it often reflects anxiety about what seriousness demands: consistency, emotional presence, accountability. These demands feel overwhelming not because they are unreasonable, but because the avoidant individual doubts their ability to meet them without losing themselves. The language creates a boundary that lowers perceived pressure. Importantly, distancing words are often accompanied by contradictory behavior. Someone may verbally insist they are unavailable while continuing to initiate contact, show care in subtle ways, or struggle to fully disengage. This inconsistency is not manipulation by default, it is internal conflict. One part of them wants connection, while another part is determined to stay safe. The mouth speaks for safety. The behavior reveals attachment. Understanding this dynamic requires discernment. It means listening not only to what is said, but to when it is said and what follows. Distancing language that emerges during emotional peaks is rarely about the other person being unwanted. It is about the avoidant person feeling emotionally exposed beyond their tolerance. The words act as a pause button, an attempt to slow the intensity. However, recognizing fear beneath distancing language does not mean ignoring the message entirely. Words still matter, they communicate limits even when those limits are fear-based. Compassion allows one to see the wound. Wisdom allows one to respect the boundary. Both truths must coexist. Distancing language within avoidant psychology is less about rejection and more about regulation. It is the sound of someone trying to breathe while standing too close to something that matters deeply. Beneath the words is often not emptiness, but unprocessed, attachment struggling to find a safe form of expression. Avoidant psychology does not emerge in isolation. It is shaped through early relational experiences where emotional safe. AD was inconsistent, unavailable, or conditional. At its root is a nervous system that learned long before adulthood that relying on others was unpredictable or costly. When a child's emotional needs are repeatedly unmet, dismissed, or met with discomfort, the psyche adapts. It learns that self-sufficiency is safer than connection, and emotional distance becomes a survival strategy rather than a preference. These early adaptations are intelligent responses to an environment that could not fully support emotional dependency. A child who learns that expressing needs leads to rejection, criticism, or emotional withdrawal does not stop having needs. They stop expressing them. Over time, the suppression becomes internalized as strength. Independence is praised, emotional restraint is rewarded, and vulnerability is quietly associated with risk. The avoidant attachment style is born not from a lack of desire for love, but from repeated lessons that love is unreliable. As adulthood approaches, these early patterns harden into identity. The avoidant individual often sees themselves as rational, self-contained, and emotionally controlled. They may take pride in not needing others. Yet beneath this identity lies a deep sensitivity to emotional disruption. Because emotional regulation was learned in isolation, closeness feels destabilizing. Intimacy threatens the carefully constructed balance that has kept them safe for so long. Self-protection becomes automatic. When emotional closeness begins to form, the avoidant nervous system anticipates loss, engulfment, or disappointment, even in the absence of current evidence. This anticipation is not conscious pessimism, it is implicit memory. The body remembers what the mind may not. Withdrawal, minimization, and emotional distancing are reflexive attempts to prevent a familiar pain from repeating itself. Unmet emotional safety also creates difficulty with trust. Trust requires the belief that another person will remain present, responsive, and attuned over time. For avoidant individuals, this belief was never consistently reinforced. As a result, they may test relationships unconsciously by maintaining distance, expecting eventual disappointment. Emotional closeness feels provisional, something that could be taken away at any moment. Distance, by contrast, feels controllable. This is why avoidant individuals often struggle not with connection itself, but with sustained emotional presence. They can experience desire, attraction, and even deep affection. Yet maintaining closeness over time activates fears of dependence and loss of autonomy. The internal conflict is not between love and indifference, but between longing and survival. Self-protection usually wins because it has been practiced longer. Importantly, avoidant psychology is not a moral failing or a lack of depth. It is the residue of adaptation. These individuals learn to regulate themselves without external reassurance. They learn to downplay emotions because emotions once had nowhere safe to land. In many cases, they were never taught how to receive comfort, only how to endure. Understanding this origin reframes avoidant behavior as wounded self-preservation rather than intentional distance. Yet awareness alone does not dissolve the pattern. Healing requires new experiences of emotional safety, ones that are consistent, non-intrusive, and respectful of autonomy. Without such experiences, the avoidant system will continue to default to withdrawal, even in the presence of genuine care. Avoidant psychology, then, is not about a lack of love. It is about love that learned to hide in order to survive. True power within relational dynamics is not found in control, persuasion, or emotional endurance. It is found in discernment. Discernment is the quiet strength that allows a person to observe without becoming consumed, to understand without self-abandonment, and to respond without reacting from fear. In the context of avoidant psychology, discernment becomes essential because empathy without boundaries quickly turns into self-erasure. Understanding why someone pulls away can awaken compassion, but compassion must be balanced with clarity. Discernment recognizes the difference between someone who is wounded and someone who is unwilling to meet you in emotional responsibility. It allows you to hold two truths at once: that another person's distance may be rooted in fear, and that their fear does not obligate you to remain in emotional uncertainty. Wisdom lies in not confusing explanation with excuse. When faced with avoidant behavior, the instinct to overgive is common. Many people attempt to prove safety through patience, reassurance, or emotional labor. Yet discernment reveals a deeper truth: safety cannot be demonstrated through sacrifice. Emotional safety emerges when two people are equally invested in showing up. If one person consistently carries the emotional weight, imbalance replaces intimacy. Standing firm does not mean closing the heart. It means remaining anchored in self-respect, while allowing others the freedom to choose their level of engagement. Discernment understands that you cannot regulate someone else's nervous system for them. You can offer presence, but you cannot override their readiness. When you release the illusion of control, you stop trying to manage outcomes and start honoring alignment. Letting go, in this context, is not rejection, it is reverence for truth. Discernment allows you to step back without bitterness, recognizing that not every connection is meant to progress, even if it is meaningful. It teaches that timing and capacity matter as much as chemistry. Love that requires constant interpretation, endurance, or self-doubt is not asking you to grow. It is asking you to shrink. Honoring your worth is an act of spiritual alignment. It means refusing to negotiate your emotional needs in exchange for proximity. Discernment reminds you that consistency is not too much to ask, clarity is not demanding, and mutual effort is not unrealistic. When someone cannot meet these standards, the wise response is not to lower them, but to uphold them with grace. Discernment also protects against false hope. It observes patterns rather than clinging to potential. It listens to actions more than promises. In avoidant dynamics, words may fluctuate, intentions may be unclear, and connection may feel intermittent. Discernment watches what remains consistent. It recognizes when emotional distance becomes a cycle rather than a phase. Ultimately, discernment is self-trust in action. It is the inner knowing that you can care deeply without losing yourself. It is the strength to remain open while choosing what is healthy. When you stand in discernment, you no longer chase clarity. You embody it. And from that grounded place, whatever stays is aligned and way. Whatever leaves makes space for something that can meet you fully without fear or retreat. Thank you for allowing the space of wisdom, reflection, and truth to unfold. May what resonated continue to guide you with clarity and strength. Goodbye for now. And may you walk forward grounded in self-worth, discernment, and peace.